I'm super excited to have you on because I had the good fortune of being on your podcast, and having met you, I was blown away by you and super inspired. And you have quite an interesting story and quite an interesting human experience. So I'd love for you to share that with this audience, because not only are you out there getting the word out about pain, physical, emotional trauma, all of that, you actually experienced physical pain in your own life through your own diagnosis, but you also had a fertility journey. And we're going to get into all of that. But I would love it if you would begin by sharing a little bit with the women listening, like, how did you start this whole Pain Game podcast? Like, how did this all happen?
Well, I don't think we have 17 hours to listen to that particular story. I mean, from a pain journey perspective, actually, my fertility journey is actually where my pain, I live in chronic pain. So we'll go back to what you were just asking. So I have something called CRPS. It's called chronic regional pain syndrome, and it sounds fake. And I can guarantee you that it's not. And there are multiple types of it. It's very hard to diagnose, and it's certainly very hard to treat. And because it is so rare, it's under the radar of anybody to try to like help us. So we're all kind of doing our own jam, right? Well, with CRPS, I started the fertility journey 8 years prior to my diagnosis. And I had been doing all of the things. My ex-husband and I were going through all of the fertility journey things that you guys have all been through, all the shots, all the pills, all the blood work, all the poke and prod and all of that, all that, oh my God, just this invasive stuff that we went through and all of the emotions behind us. And sitting in the waiting room with all of us with our Louis Vuitton bags, and all of us, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to make a baby because our bodies won't let us. And one of the things that was so interesting about when I couldn't get pregnant was that I found out during the same time of diagnosis with CRPS that some of the drugs that I was on for infertility treatment actually cause what I have. And so I read all these. I know your face is so funny. You did that on my episode as well. So I studied all these neurological journals because CRPS is a neurological pain disease that is very rare. And so when you think about us getting poked and prodded and all of these drugs interjected into us, and we signed the phone book of paperwork signing our bodies and our livelihood and our if, ands, and whats and bins and who knows what's going to come up. We signed it all away. And so I found these two drugs and I went and did research on them, and they caused RSD, which is what CRPS used to be called. And RSD is something, if some of you are familiar with Paula Abdul, she has RSD, and she went in her whole entire pain journey. In fact, when she was on, what the heck was the voice show she was on? Whatever it was. There's so many America's Got Talents and whichever one she was on, she was always given a lot of crap about how she always seemed drunk on the show. And she wasn't. She was going through treatment for RSD, aka CRPS, because the drugs they put you on make you infertile. They make you absolutely crazy. They make you suicidal. They make you lose your mind. And so when you're in this process of trying to make a baby, and then all of a sudden, all these other things come out that infertility drugs already exacerbate. Now it's a cesspool of now what? And that's where I ended up in the now what.
Wow. And it's so funny because when I think about, like, thank you for sharing that, because it really took me back. I remember that mountain of paperwork that nobody's actually reading. Nobody's actually reading it.
I accept.
Yeah, except because we're like, if I don't do this, I don't have a baby.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that's it. And, not everybody thinks that, but I know I did. I did. Yeah, you could have told me, there could have been something in bold that said we're injecting you with plutonium, but I would,
didn't matter.
It didn't matter. I was like, well, what's a little plutonium, along the way to my baby, right? I mean, that's fascinating.
And fascinating is a good word for it, but it isn't in the middle of it, because when I kept going through the motions, right? IVF and all of the things, right? And fortunately for me, I did not end up getting pregnant with the person that I was trying to have a baby with. So there was an abusive relationship that I was in. I probably shouldn't have been making a baby with him in the first place. So the Lord works in mysterious ways in that regard. But fuck, man, like the fact that the drugs that I was taking caused what I am dealing with now, and I still didn't get a baby out of all of it, is a challenge for me. And it's been something that I am mama all through and through. I've got little nieces and nephews that are my children. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a better mother than they are. You know what I mean? I'm like, I worship these children. They're so incredibly wonderful, and they are an extension of who I wanted to be. And so now I have the opportunity to be like a bitch and aunt and just like kill them with kindness and show them the wonders of this world. But I was not able to go through the have a baby in my tummy experience. And I went through stages we went through the adoption process, and we went through maybe getting into surrogacy. And I was real hesitant about surrogacy because I had a feeling that I was going to be jealous. That I was going to be jealous of the surrogate because they were able to carry the baby with my husband that I was unable to have. I walked right through that pretty quickly because I'm like, guys, if you want a baby, like you just let that go. You let it go. You want healthy, you want happy. That's 9 months. It's 9 months of your life versus the rest of your life. So don't lean on the surrogate side of it and make you say, no, I don't want to have a surrogate because I'm jealous of that particular experience. So if any of you are out there that are experiencing that feeling, I can tell you that it only harms you to have that kind of feeling, at least from my perspective.
Man, Lyndsay, you're really laying it down here. So let's unpack that, because I love what you're sharing, because like here you are in this place where you have this circling cloud of fucked, like going around your head. You're struggling with your fertility.
Well said.
Yeah, you're in this abusive relationship. You're injecting yourself with these drugs that later cause, this experience that you're describing. I mean, what do you think? Like, what was going through your head at that point? Because a lot of women, will get into the idea that I'm not worthy, nothing's working for me. I mean, what were some of the things that were going through your head? Because normally, we'll have a relationship to run, we rely on our relationship, right? Like, okay, the IVF didn't work. Let me just love in my relationship a little bit more and then I'll get back to it. But you were getting hit from so many different angles.
Yeah, I mean, I was hit by all of it. Failure, number one, failure after failure after failure. And I have PCOS, so many of us do in that world, polycystic ovarian syndrome. And that was diagnosed at a very young age, but you'll be able to have babies. And then it was, you're not going to be able to have babies because of this. And then it was kind of like, well, fuck you. Like, can you give me like another try? Because I'm 17 and I'm kind of not trying to have babies right now. I mean, there's a lot of 17-year-olds were doing it around me, but it just wasn't my jam. So, for me, a lot of it was, I mean, it's so emotional when you're going through all of it. Not only are these drugs they're putting you on, I mean, they make you batshit, they're just all over the map. You're angry one minute and you're supposed to have sex with this person in that minute because it's this time at this day and I don't like you and I hate you. And what the hell are you wearing right now? Take it off. Only from your pants down. I don't even want to see the rest of you. Like, we go through all of that trial and tribulation on a lunch break, and then it's a negative pregnancy test over and over and over and over and over again. How are you not to feel like a failure? Yeah. How are you not feeling like you're a failure? It's your body. It's not you. And it's because a lot of us have been through so much trauma. And for me, my reason in my brain and my heart and my soul is the reason that I was unable to, at the end of it all, unable to procreate, was because of so much trauma that had happened to me over decades. And we talk about it on my show, the Pain Game Podcast, where originally I started my show to talk about chronic pain, which stemmed from all of these drugs from infertility treatment. I was just going to kind of whine about pain until I figured out that I needed to give my pain purpose and then figure out where it actually came from. And what it ended up coming from was trauma. And so when you research and you read all the neurological journals and you do all of the things, when you have been through trauma, no matter what that means to you, I hate little t and big T. The little traumas and the big traumas. I don't care who you are. A little trauma could be a big trauma to you. Big trauma to the next person could be a little trauma. It doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma is trauma. Pain is pain is pain. If you've been through stuff that you haven't actually focused on and you haven't unpacked, to use your word, because you use it all the time, to unpack what's happened to you, not what you did, but what's happened to you, that part of you is part of your fertility journey and journal. Because it is. It's the body keeps the score. If you haven't read that book, it is an incredible book. Bam. I should have an affiliate marketing link for them because I swear to God, I sell this book like nobody, like hotcakes. It is the best book I've ever read because it really opened up my eyes to how my body has kept the score from sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse from all of my life since I was 9 years old, and how that affected my fertility and me being able to get pregnant. I think that's actually 100% of the reason why I didn't get pregnant. Wow. I don't think it had to do with anything else but trauma and where it sat in my body and how my body interpreted that trauma.
Holy shit.
That's my story though.
I love that you're raising that because I think we as women don't take that seriously enough, right? Mm-hmm. Like for the most part, we are taught. It's not like anyone is just born thinking this, but I think we are conditioned to believe that we are just a bunch of different parts. And that trauma that you're talking about, it has to go somewhere. It doesn't just go into the ether. I mean, that book that you referred to,
The Body Keeps the Score.
Body Keeps Score. I love that book. I also love When the Body Says No by
Gabor.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh, man.
Both of those two in cohorts are like, those are your Bibles, ladies.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, and I know that we know as women who have lived this journey, and then the women listening who are currently on their journey, we all know this inherently, but it gets poo-pooed. Just like people will call, CRPS fake or whatever, it's like, who is saying that? It's clearly not the people living it.
No.
Right? I mean, it's easy to blow off, but we know this, that it is very real. And so you had PCOS. Where do you feel like the trauma was sitting? Was it in your abdomen?
I absolutely believe that a lot of it has been in my pelvic area for sure. And it was actually in my feet as well. And in early days when I started my show and I started talking with healers because I was like, the reason I started my show was I actually wanted to heal my body because my CRPS is full body. So it's from my feet up. And it feels like my body is being burned from the inside out, from my bone marrow out all day long, right? And so I'm always hot, and I've been in menopause, people, for like my whole life now. You complain about it coming out later on in life. My God, I've been in it for like ever. Oh my God, even though I haven't been. But a lot of the things that, that we're faced with in that we have to go, okay, well, this caused that for sure. I can pinpoint specific things 100% that made my body go wonky. And I can tell I did a lot of timeline therapy. So I went backwards from current day backwards, like when health issues started to happen. And then when certain things happened alongside of those issues. So when there was a health issue that stemmed up, like whatever it might be, X, Y, and Z, I ended up getting, my appendicitis. Okay, well, let's just call it that. Well, what was going on at that time? Well, I can tell you exactly what was going on at that time. I was being abused by 12 frat boys because I was raped by 12 frat boys in an evening. Okay. So you line up, her face is all dropped. I say it like it's in passing, but it's taken me 2.5 years to be able to talk about it. So, but when you go back and you go in timeline therapy, these are the things that started happening to me with my body, my feminine, my periods, my everything, cramping, my sexuality, all of it started to stem when I started to look at all the different places in my life where trauma had happened. And that is where my body started to fail me. And so when I look back at it that way, I'm actually very proud of my body for having gone through the things that they did. And I'm here to talk about it. But they absolutely have to do with not just my infertility issues, but certainly my health issues that I'm dealing with now because of trauma.
Yeah, I mean, you're such a fucking superhero right now because, I mean, having prosecuted those kinds of cases,
right?
I mean, I just was so blown away. I mean, I learned so much from the survivors that I was working with about resilience and about the power that we have as women to make whatever comes into our life mean.
Yep.
Like it's a conscious choice.
Yep.
And I know you talk about that a lot on your show. Yeah. Is like it's a day by day choice, sometimes minute by minute, but we're always choosing. We don't necessarily choose the things that happen to us, but we have a choice about what we make those things mean. And isn't it like fascinating how our body in a mode of protection kind of in some ways just shuts down?
Absolutely. How could you not?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I tend to call myself a warrior, not a survivor.
Okay. We'll go with warrior. We love it. We love it all. We love
it all. Warrior.
Yeah. I mean, it's because you're taking an experience and you are taking control of it. And you're not a victim. And you're going out there and changing the conversation through what you're doing. And I think that the point that you're making about dealing with your trauma, like, I mean, awareness is the first step.
Sure.
And getting a sense of, okay, like something's not right here. And I think we as women know when something is not right in us, but a lot of times we just push it down just to be able to get along. We don't want to be complicated. All of this, like we were talking about before we started recording, this politeness, this politesse, yes. that we try to be polite about this stuff. But I would love it if you would share. I mean, like, how did you start warrioring? Oh my goodness.
Said.
Yeah, I know. How did you start like unraveling that and like working through it? Because that's a lot.
It is a lot. Honestly, I did not start dealing with all of the things that have happened to me from such a young age until about 2.5 years ago. And I'm 46. And I started to kind of, without really knowing that I was doing it, but really thoughtful, thought-provoking work on myself, along with like taking all of the whispers in my shadows and like listening to them and going, oop, I don't need to listen to those anymore. I need to listen to these whispers instead of those. And really came down to, I had to accept what had happened to me and then some, over and over and over again, accepting, and then getting to a place where I was not afraid if anybody heard my story anymore. So when I finally got to that place where it was like, I don't give a fuck, like, and that's to my parents as well. You guys don't know, I have protected everybody from my story. And by doing that, my parents, my siblings, my this, my that, I protected everybody, didn't tell anybody. My parents still don't even know the story that I'm telling you right now. And it came to the point where I'm like, Mom, if you listen to my show, you're going to have a lot of questions. And some of them might put you in a straitjacket. So be prepped. But it took really looking myself in the mirror, as cliche as that is, and going, you know what? Do not be afraid of your story and what you've been through and who you are and how that has turned you into the strong ass, badass woman that you are, without feeling gross about it. Because there's that element of people are going to judge me. People are going to always with us women like, well, what did we do wrong? We didn't do anything wrong. We did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong when I was 13. I did nothing wrong when I was 19. I did it. And, you go on and on with all these things, but those are the narratives that we're taught, especially when we're kids of the 70s and the 80s, where you're like, nope, you just bottle that right on in and you stuff it down as far as you can. It will explode in your 40s and we will have no idea what that's going to look like. I can tell you what it looks like. It looks like Roseanne and Lyndsay are talking on a podcast about it because we are going to educate women to be stronger. And there's a line that I love. They whispered to her, "You cannot withstand the storm." And she whispered back, "I am the storm." And that is something that I love so much because, like those whispers I was talking about earlier, baby, be the storm.
Yeah.
Be the storm.
Oh, man. If I haven't told you in the last 30 seconds, I fucking love you.
I know you love me. I love you too.
Yeah. But this is so good because what you're saying is really blowing the lid off this facade. Yeah. That so many of us wear in order to just get through the day, play the role that we've been playing since we were little kids, to go along, to get along, all of this stuff. And you're absolutely right. We will step on a landmine at some point in our lives. And I do believe you're correct that somewhere in our 40s, it blows up. And I think it blows up uniquely for women who are living a fertility journey because it's kind of like, I did all the stuff. I followed all the rules. Right. I checked all the boxes.
Right.
And I still can't do this biological basic.
Yeah, this thing that we're told we're supposed to do. And this is our role on this planet. And I'm okay now. Like, I'm groovy. Like, I'm good. There's a lot of people on this planet. Like, I'm okay. But it took me a lot of time to get to the place that I was okay with the fact that I wasn't going to be a mom. And the journey was challenging to get to that place. But I live vicariously through other people, and then I send their children home.
Yes. Well, so let's talk about what made it okay for you, because there must have been a switch that was flipped inside of you for probably many different reasons, that you were able to let go of that as your own unique path and to be open to the way that I call God, universe, source, aka Gus, would come into your life and say there's a different path for you, that you can take all this that you've been through, process it, and be open to something else. Because I do not, in anything you have said, get the sense that you gave up. I don't think that was the case for you. Mm-mm. So elucidate us with all of your goodness on how you got to that place, because it's fucking badass.
Well, you know what it ended up coming down to? And that's a great question, actually, because one that's like, how did I get there? That's a very loaded question. At the end of the day, it came down to me sitting down with my mom, because I'm an only child, and sitting down with my mom and going, all right, this is it. I can keep going down this path with a man that we know I'm not going to end up being with for the rest of my life, because we cannot be around a drunk, abusive human being. And the fact that I was trying to make children with them We all have those things like, oh, we're going to have a baby to save the marriage. Don't do that. Oh, we're going to have a marriage because we're going to have a baby because he's going to stop drinking. Don't do that. Don't do that. I was doing that. And then when I finally made the decision that I wasn't going to be married to a drunk, abusive motherfucker anymore, the baby journey kind of stopped simultaneously, but I was not necessarily saying no to adoption. But I did sit down with my mom and I talked with her and I said, are you okay if you end up not being a grandma? And it was a very, very difficult conversation with her because she was not. And she was the only one out of all of her friends that didn't have grandbabies. And so I said, you have to take the pressure off of me because this is my life and not yours. And putting the pressure on me like you have to continue going down this route with somebody you know that I should not be having children with, but you just want to be a grandma cannot be the reason that I'm doing it anymore. And so I initially had to kibosh that whole journey with my mother. And now her and my dad are like totally fine, you know, but it took them going through their own stuff too. And then I had to divorce them, motherfucker. And then I started going down the adoption journey for a little bit of time. And then I was, my pain, the diagnosis that I got actually got worse. And so for me, it was a decision on behalf of a to-be child versus my decision because I'm in a wheelchair now for 50% of my life. And I had to make a decision on behalf of the to-be kid for their life because I didn't know what was going to end up happening with my body and my health. So I had to make the choice to say no for them.
Wow. That's so fucking brave, lady. Like on so many.
I don't know about that, but.
Well, no, but it takes some fucking courage. It takes courage because something had to happen within you to be able to go to your mother, sit her down and say, look, the pressure's got to come off.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm living my life, not yours. I love you, but there are certain realities in my life that I am consciously choosing to not be a part of anymore. And this changes the landscape. And are you okay with that? I mean, I don't know if it was necessarily, are you? I know you well enough to know that you probably was more like, well, this is how it's going to be.
It was a little bit more of this is how it's going to be. But a lot of what I told her, I said, why don't you come with me to 2 weeks of infertility treatment with me? Just come with me. Sit in there, sit in the waiting room, watch everybody come out crying, watch people going in excited, coming out like, come in the room with me and see like the little prayers that I'm writing down for this to happen and this to work. Go through that with me, get poked and prodded and walk through it every single day with me as I'm doing it for 2 weeks. And you tell me if you want me to keep doing this, even though I'm done now. And she didn't even want to do it because she was like, all right, I get it. I'm good.
I mean, it's fascinating to me, Lyndsay, how wise your body was and is in the end. Because, so many women get wrapped up in this idea that my body is failing me. No, your body knew that there was something else that was operating here. Your body knew you were in an unhealthy, unhappy relationship. And your body was also shifting your attention to, wow, now we have this condition.
And I had to get out of an abusive marriage simultaneously.
Yeah. I mean, just add a few more things onto the silver platter that, like, let's add some things into this dumpster fire, right? I mean, like, we all have lived that at some point where our lives look like a dumpster fire. But you made some really powerful conscious choices in those moments. I mean, do you ever kind of, I don't know, sit back and say, wow, where did that come from in you? Because for you to step off of the journey and then confront your mother about this reality, and then also at the same time be admitting that your relationship was not going to proceed, like, man, I mean, it's just extraordinary to allow all of that at the same time and to still be standing, at least.
And it was a very short span of time because I needed to like bang that out really quick. Like we got to end this like right quick. Not only we're bleeding hundreds of thousands of dollars. We all know that in the infertility world. It's just like, how much can we pay to wreak havoc on our body? Just let me know. The checkbox, like, what would you like to have happen to your body? Well, let's put on a gargantuan amount of weight. I'm in.
Yeah.
Let me hate everybody around me. Done. You know, I mean, you just go through all of the things that you sacrifice in order to have a child when you can't just, your girlfriend next to you gets pregnant thinking about it. You know, those girls are all around us in the infertility journey. You know, one of my girlfriends has 6 kids with 4 dudes. She thinks about it and she gets pregnant. I know. Yeah, I know exactly. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's for a different show.
Yeah. I mean, that's their different. And
challenge. We look at them and go, why, how? Do not compare yourself to somebody else's journey. You cannot do it because no matter what, you're going to fail when you're holding yourself up to other people. Your body is your body, is your body, is your body. And that is it. And we talk about that on the Pain Game podcast too, because we deal with trauma-informed approach to care. So a lot of the things that we talk about, infertility is one of them in regards to trauma and how if you don't approach it and you don't deal with it, it does get in the way of you conceiving because your body is holding on to all kinds of stuff. And until you start dealing with that body keeps the score stuff. Till you start really broaching those issues, whatever they might be. It might be something so minuscule to somebody else, but it might be something huge to you. Don't underestimate that either. Because, you know, and we're like, well, she just went to a Chinese herbalist and acupuncturist and she was pregnant the next day. And I went to the same place and I'm still dealing with it 3 years later. It's not about Karen, Stacey. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not about Karen. It's about you, Stacey.
Well, but like, this is so big.
I know.
This is so big because it's like, how about if women, instead of immediately running to a clinic, became more cognizant of their trauma.
Amen.
Did some work on the fucking trauma. And then let's ask some questions, right? Yeah. Like, let's see where we're at. Because I'm telling you, the same thing was true for me. Like, going in a different direction. Because it's funny that I wish that I was as conversant with my trauma as you were. Because I was wearing this armor of being a prosecutor. I don't have feelings.
Sure.
Like,
yes, you do.
Funny. Like, well, but that was the thing. It's like, I'm telling you, Lyndsay, you would have laughed if you were a fly on the wall listening to some of the conversations. Like, we had, and I worked with a bunch of female prosecutors. Our office was largely female, and almost everyone was going through fertility treatment. I found out later. Like, so many women were struggling to conceive. It's like, do we not see the mind-body connection here? Like, Hello. Is the math that hard? Like, but nobody wanted to admit any of that. And it sounded woo-woo. But the funny thing is we would it was like, if there was an Olympic sport for not feeling, we all would have gold medaled. Probably been separated by milliseconds, right? Like, if there was like dead inside Olympics, I would have won because because I had no idea what to do. I mean, like, I'd wake up, get ready, I get a phone call. I have to be at an autopsy at 8:30 in the morning. And then I have to go do a forensic child molest interview at the Juvenile Justice Center, like doing all kinds of, like, from trauma to trauma. But it wasn't just in the work. It was the kind of trauma that you're talking about from childhood and the kind of normal human feelings. Like, we just compartmentalize those things and push them so far down. And where do they go?
In your body.
In your body. Yep. You know, like stomach problems, headaches, migraines, like all kinds of crazy shit. But we've been conditioned as women, just like you were mentioning the feminine before, we've been conditioned as women, like, we act like men. If you want to be taken seriously, if you want to be successful, you have to act like a man. Mm-hmm. Bullshit,
because they're a bunch of babies. So I don't want to act like that at all. I'm over that.
No. I mean,
they live 1 hour in my body and he's like, forget about it. It's paper cut, off to urgent care we go.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about, so you go through all this, you make these dramatic life changes, you decide, you choose something better for yourself. You choose to live and not to be crushed under the expectations of other people. And so let's talk about like how you, like where you are today, like, and your mission and all that good stuff. Like, where is Lyndsay today? Like, what is she doing? Like, she has love in her life now, all kinds of amazing things.
Oh yeah. I mean, my life is in a very different spot than it was, say, 10 years ago, say 5 years ago. But the kid thing is always going to be here in the back of my mind. It's always going to be here in my heart. I'm always going to be the mommy in me. That's not going anywhere. And I'm blessed that I do have nieces and nephews. I'm an only child, but I'm an adoptive aunt. So like I've got all of these other people, and all of their parents are like, can we just give them to you for a little while? I'm like, sure, just as long as I can give them back to you. So I try to do the best that I can, for spending the most time that I can with my nieces and nephews and giving them the best, damn advice I can and giving them the best world life experience that I can when they're with us. But yeah, it came down to the point that I had to get out of, abuse. And I encourage you to do the same. If you are in an abusive relationship, you are not alone. You can reach out to me at the Pain Game Podcast. Getting out of that was the first step that I needed to take. Dealing with marital rape is no joke. And with that, trying to make a baby under those circumstances, not great. And trying to fake it to try to have a baby under those circumstances because you're trying to have a baby because that's the thing you're supposed to do. And that's because that's the next step in your life. Don't do that if that's not the next step in your life. And if you're feeling like that baby's not going to be born into an amazing environment, don't do it. Don't be selfish about it. But if I got my luck, I get pregnant like in 5 years from now, right? And I'm 50.
Yeah.
But at that point, I'm living in Italy and they are going to be complete Italians. So that's where I'm going to be at that point. And that is not untrue. I decided that I was going to, I've run a marketing agency for 24 years. I decided to retire, and I've decided to put every single ounce of my effort into my show and working on helping people in the trauma and pain community for a full-time job now. And my goal is to help others that have dealt with trauma, that have dealt with things. I mean, we're talking about fertility drugs that caused me putting me into a wheelchair. We're talking about fighting a lot of the systematic things that we're being pushed into to try to have babies too. And, do your research. That's one of the things that was incredibly important for me is, like we mentioned earlier, we signed the Bible, the telephone book of all of the different papers and all of the drugs. I would definitely, and this isn't a scare tactic, guys, but it is something for sure. Think about your body and your future from a holistic perspective, not just about, I just want to have the baby, but how are you going to be able to be the best mom that you possibly can under the circumstances that you're in, and do the best research that you can. And then when you're there, you feel all the more better about your decision, And for me, hey, if I got pregnant in the next 5 years, I don't know what I would do. I don't know, because I don't know where my body's going to be. Am I going to be okay? Like, one of my best girlfriends on the planet is a quadriplegic. She was in an ATV accident and she was 3 months pregnant. And she was just immediately broke her neck, quadriplegic. She gave birth to her baby after being a quadriplegic. She took the littlest amount of drugs that she possibly could for pain to make sure that her baby was okay. And he is 8 years old. And she's a badass. So, no matter what your trials and tribulations are, you can still make it. You can still be the mom that you always wanted to be, no matter what you're faced with. Just make sure that you're doing the best that you can for yourself first, and then the rest will follow. I mean,
Wow.
that's my perspective, at least.
Yeah. No, and it's so wise though, because wouldn't that be interesting? I could totally see that happening for you.
Oh my God. My husband's going to be like, no, we're too old for that.
You're not too old for that. I mean,
He is.
I could totally.
No.
I'm gonna hold a candle.
Oh my God. Well, then you're the godmother.
Yeah, I am going to light a candle for that one because.
Oh my God, he's gonna kill you.
Yeah, he can thank me later. But yeah, I mean, I think the cool thing about all of this, like if we take everything that you've shared and like we look at all the work that you're doing in the world, like you did turn pain into purpose. Like that is such a beautiful thing. Like it's so generous, it's so real, it's so kind, and it's also I think you're demonstrating that it doesn't end with pain. There's so much more. Like this pain comes into your life. It is a reality and it shows up in many different ways. But it can be a path. Like maybe the pain is a path.
Well, I believe wholeheartedly that what I say what has happened to me is a gift. Okay. And that is a decision that I make on the daily, but it is absolutely a blessing, not a curse. Was it a curse before? Yes, because my mindset was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I'm never, right? All of the negative narratives, all of the negative speak, all of the things you could possibly say ill about yourself, I did. I beat myself up. I went into depression. I was suicidal. I went through all of the things. And I am proud to say that none of that stuff mattered, that I was getting so butthurt about. I'm like, what? Wow, I gave that much energy when I could have been giving this so much more. And when I shifted my mindset to with my pain specifically, it was like, well, I'm either going to live like this for the rest of my life, or I'm going to live like this for the rest of my life. Same words, totally different vibe, you know? Right. And that was a big thing that was a big hurdle for me, because living in the kind of pain that I live in, you'd never guess it the way during this conversation. But right now, from my hips down, it feels like somebody is stabbing me with hot daggers and that I'm on fire. And that's what's happening. But that's every day, all day. So I'm used to it. So I approach it with, well, hello. Yeah. It's nice to have you here today.
Yeah. Well, and,
what kind of trouble are we going to get into today instead of I'm going to go, woe is me in my bed, you know?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah. And I think that's what makes you such an inspiration. And, you know, I hope every woman listening to this podcast goes and bombards yours, because there's so many fascinating stories and really heartfelt testimonies from people.
My guests are insane.
Yeah.
They're amazing people.
Yeah. From people who come back from the brink. And I think sometimes we get really siloed on this journey and think that, you know, not only is this whole setup against me, but that there isn't light at the end of the tunnel. But I love that you are living proof that not only is there light, it's fucking sunshine.
Hell yeah.
On, you know, like on an Italian beach somewhere that you can turn that pain into purpose and really make it something that serves people at the highest level. So I'm very grateful that we met. I'm very grateful that you're here. So we will include links to the Pain Game podcast.
And certainly our episode together, because ours was epic.
Yeah.
It was really good. Yeah,
it was really, really cool. And I hope women listening to this, as I said, will bombard you, because there's so much wonderful stuff on your podcast, and what you're doing in the world is badly needed.
Yeah. And thank you also, men. Our demographics for our show is actually 75-25. It's an interesting split, and it's getting higher in number for men listening to the show. And let me tell you what they're listening for. They're listening to help their women, their sisters, their mothers. I get emails from men more than I get emails from women that are asking for help for the women in their lives. So guys, gals, the men are out there. They are actually trying.
Yeah. Well, of course.
And also, you're not, every day is not going to be fucking like flowers and roses and like sweetness, you know, like we have our bad days. Like give yourself a bad day. We all need to ugly cry. We all need to like feel the end of the world is happening. You know, we have those, like give yourself some grace, man. I certainly have those days. Those are the reason those days make the good days even better. You know, I mean, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I love it, Lyndsay. And I hope that this audience loves you as much as I do. So we're going to be sending people over to your podcast. Thank you for sharing your life experience here with us. It's such an inspiration. And I sincerely salute you for the work that you're doing. So keep on doing it.
I'm going to keep on doing it.
That's awesome, woman. Well, thank you so much for being on.
Love this episode of the Fearlessly Fertile podcast? Subscribe now and leave an awesome review. Remember, the desire in your heart to be a mom is there because it was meant for you. When it comes to your dreams, keep saying hell yes.